Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Hermits perform live at the Birchmere in Alexandria, Virginia tomorrow night. I spoke with frontman Peter Noone about the band's role in the British invasion, with hits like I'm Into Something Good and I'm Henry VIII I Am.
It's nice to be here. Thank you.
What can we expect from the show? I assume we're going to hear all the great Hermits hits. Anything new you've been working on?
Well, we always do new stuff. We don't have a sort of set list. We just wing it based on the audience. That's a very good audience. I played there many times, and it's an unusual audience because you can communicate with them because they're kind of near to the stage, and it's a useful place for me to try new things. And I tell stories, and I sing songs, and sometimes the story leads to a song, and somebody shouts out a song from like the first album that we do. We've been around so long, we've got like 300 songs that we all know, that everybody in the band knows. And if you don't know it, you don't play along, you just sit the song out.
Oh, yeah, and I know you have, people at the Birchmere have seen you a bunch of times, so it's always good having you back. Well, take me back to the beginning. I know you were, born in Lancashire, England in '47. What sort of stuff did you grow up listening to? Or I guess my question is, how did you get bit by the music bug to begin with?
Well, the music bug was in my family. It was, like for every funeral, wedding, christening, baptism, marriage, people would gather in my grandmother's house, and there was a room, and she was the choir mistress at the local church, and my grandfather was the organ player at the local church. My father was a trombone player in a band. His brother was called as a trumpet player in a band, and my Auntie Mary played Fats Waller songs on the piano. And most of it, we just played popular music. And in those days, popular music had Beatles, The Sound of Music, Mantovani, Fats Waller, Little Richard. So everything was on the table in there, and I was a singer. I was one of the people in the family who sang the songs. So I learned lots of, we'd do Ink Spots and Buddy Holly, and my father liked to play a bit of Woody Herman's Thundering Herd. And consequently, I was like Paul McCartney and everybody else who came from a musical family. We were immersed in 6,000 songs of different types.
Yeah, it's nice when you have all that sort of varied background to pull from. Well, so how did you actually form the group Hermits? Or I guess in the beginning it was called Herman and His Hermits, right? In 1964.
It was a long time before that. We were all in bands when we were about 13. It just seemed to be 13 was the age of skiffle. And everybody had a skiffle group. My grandmother was even in our group. She played the washboard. And everybody, the songs were very easy. Lonnie Donegan had come along and had showed us all that if you knew 3 chords, you could play every kind of skiffle song known to man. And everybody had a band, and nobody had any money, so it was just street kind of stuff. And that morphed. That was a band called the Cyclones, which was a skiffle group that became the Heartbeats, and that became Pete Novak and the Heartbeats, which became Herman and the Hermits, and then it became Herman's Hermits. But all of those bands played at the Cavern and the Oasis in Manchester on the way to becoming Herman's Hermits. We morphed into Herman's Hermits basically with all the energy from all those different bands. So some people in those original bands didn't want to do it for a living. And what Herman's Hermits was for me and for people who all believed that we had a future in the music business and that we could all quit our jobs. I quit school. I didn't quit school. I just stopped going. And, I'd already done all the work that they were doing. So that Herman's Hermits became this band that we could play 3 times a day at the Cavern because we didn't have a job. We could play anywhere we wanted to. And Herman's Hermits always did more gigs than anybody else around and still do.
For sure. Well, so how did you actually get the moniker, the nickname Herman then? Why, what, your name's Peter, but where did Herman come from?
We were a Buddy Holly cover band, I guess. We only sang Buddy Holly songs. That we were called the Heartbeats, Pete Novak and the Heartbeats. And we were playing in a pub, and I wore, when I did Buddy Holly, I wore horn-rimmed glasses. I still got them. I still wear horn-rimmed glasses, but I used to put them on and go, hail, all that Buddy Holly stuff. And the guy who owned the pub came over and said, what the bloody hell are you doing? And I said, are you stupid? It's Buddy Holly. He says, it's nothing like Buddy Holly. It's more like Herman from the Bullwinkle Show. And he meant Sherman from the Bullwinkle Show, but we laughed at it, and I became Herman. And then he called the band the Bloody Hermits. What are you laughing at? You should be the Bloody Hermits. And we became Herman and the Bloody Hermits for a minute. And we had like every group band, we had our business cards printed, Herman and the Hermits, weddings, bar mitzvahs, anything, with my mother's phone number on it. My mother was the only person who had a phone in the band. And from then it went on. We suddenly got more and more, because we wanted to play. See, it didn't seem like work. We played every night of the week. We didn't really care about being paid and stuff like that. We just wanted to play, and that was the key, really. That we just wanted to play. We were, we came from family. My dad would have loved to have had a gig every night on the trombone, but he was an accountant by now. You know what I mean? So we just went out to work and played. Sometimes for nothing. We had to make a profit because we needed to put petrol in the van and stuff like that. So we needed to pay all the expenses. But we were all living with our mums and dads or our grandparents or whatever. And there was no stress, financial stress.
Wow. So then, you're playing all those weddings, bar mitzvahs, living with parents and grandparents, what have you. What was the big moment that changed everything? Like, how did you actually get signed to make a record?
Well, in those days, I think what happened was you played around and you built a following, and then it became your turn to get signed. It was just the way it worked. It went like the Hollies and the Four Pennies and Freddie and the Dreamers and all these other bands around us were all getting signed. And then Wayne Fontana and the Mindbenders got signed, and bit by bit we became signable. And we went for an audition in London, and we got turned down for the first one. And then we eventually got signed, and it was Mickey Most who came to. We were playing a club called the Beachcomber in Bolton, and he came down and saw the band and signed us. It was as simple as that, really. It was our turn. We were the most likely band in town to get signed. You're next kind of thing. And a lot of people got signed and regretted it instantly because they got signed to the wrong label at the wrong time with the wrong producer. But we landed perfectly on our feet with Mickey Most, who became, my best friend, the best man at my wedding, my daughter's godfather, and my friend. And we hung, and he understood exactly what I was talking about when we talked about music. We both shared the same musical knowledge. So, the Everly Brothers, the reverb on Walk Right Back, and he'd know, oh, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I said, can you, what drummer can play that? Bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum, ba-da-dum. And he'd go, oh, yeah, Bobby Graham.
Yeah, you had like a shared language. He almost finishing each other's sentences. That's amazing. Well, you made the most of it with the first, your big breakout hit was something that, people still remember today. That song, something tells me I'm into something good. It was a Carole King, Jerry Goffin written song, right?
Yeah, but we made it our own. We took it, and it was a girl's song, and I rewrote the lyrics to be a boy's song without permission. And, once it was a hit, everybody agreed that it was a very good idea.
Well, tell me more about that writing that. You just like what made you, any good stories from the recording of that?
Well, we'd always done that. We used to do My Boy Lollipop at the Cavern because nobody else would do My Boy Lollipop. It was a girl's song. And it just was odd. And we used to do Mrs. Brown, You Got a Lovely Daughter. And we used to do Mother-in-Law by Bernie Kay because I thought it was ironic that a 15-year-old boy would have a mother-in-law. But the audience just liked the song. They didn't listen to any of the general part of it. So we'd always just change songs to fit. And when I didn't know the words for a song, I would make them up. I just make them up as I went along. Like we'd do Walking with My Angel, which was a Bobby V song. And I couldn't tell you what he said on the record, but I said, when this roving dance is command, which means nothing, but that's how it was. I still do that. If I don't know where I am in the song, I just make up words.
I love it. Well, I know I'm into something good. It paid off changing it to the boys' song, as you said, because it went to #1 in the UK. I think it dethroned, knocked off the Kinks. You really got me, and it charted pretty high here in America too. And after that, you were off to the races. I know you had. Tell me about your next hit single, "Can't You Hear My Heartbeat?" How did that one come together?
There was England is a small country. It's a very small country. So everybody kind of knew each other. All the musicians, all the bands, knew about each other and knew each other. So there was a great band called Carter Lewis and the Southerners. And they were called the Southerners because they're from the south of England. And they were a touring band, and they had two guys in the band called John Carter and Ken Lewis, Carter and Lewis. And they had this song that they thought would be a good idea. It sounded like the perfect follow-up to I'm Into Something Good, if you know what I mean. And they got that song to us. We recorded it. We used to just have fun in the studio. It was always great fun. So, and on that record, we got the song and we go in the studio and record it. And Mickey Most would run into the room and go, ha, on it. He'd make this funny noise. And, that's part of the record, and now the audience do that, when we get to that thing. So it came about because it was sent to Mickey Most for Herman's Hermits. Songwriters in those days would say, oh, I got a great song. It'd be good for Herman's Hermits, or it'd be good for the Monkees, or it'd be good for the day. You know what I mean? It was a period where songs would get sent to you and you'd go, holy guacamole, look at this unbelievable song somebody sent for us to do. Let's record it tonight. And that's how we did it. And Mickey was very interested in getting things done quickly and capturing sort of moments. If the moment was good in the studio, it didn't matter if people had made mistakes on the record. And like House of the Rising Sun has a massive gaffe in it, but nobody ever noticed it because the record is so brilliant. And so we got like Wonderful World with Jimmy Page on guitar, and the drummer, which is Bobby Graham, who's also the drummer on the Dave Clark Five. Jimmy Page had cut the intro in half, so it used to go da 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 da, and Jimmy said, "That's boring. Let's just do it once." So we went da 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 da. Don't know much about history. So, but Bobby Graham was fixing a hi-hat or something at the time and missed that thing through his headset, and he played the second intro. He played the first 4 bars twice, and you can hear him catching up on the record, but it kind of adds to the energy. By the time we got to the bridge, you can tell he's into it. Oh, I got it now. He thought we were going to record it again, but we never recorded anything again. We always went with the first take because it had that kind of high energy. And we got this take done, and for Wonderful World, and Mickey said, "Okay, Jimmy, go and overdub. Overdub the guitar, and Peter, you go and overdub the lead vocal," and that was it. And it was put. We put records out like that. They weren't supposed to be perfect. They were supposed to be capturing moments.
Well, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. Now I want to go look up the song and try to listen for, him catching up on the drums in the background.
Yeah,
Tell
you
me,
can definitely hear it. Any drummer goes, "Woo, he's not playing the same parts as everyone else."
I'm looking forward to looking up that. Cool. Well, tell me about another one you had, Mrs. Brown. You've got a lovely daughter. That one was a huge hit too for you.
Well, it was what happened was we were making an album, our first album, and we had all these songs that we'd played live for 100 years, but some of them you couldn't record. You couldn't do like any Chuck Berry songs because other people had done them all and they'd done them better than us. Like the Beatles had done Roll Over Beethoven, the Stones had done Come On, we did Memphis, but we didn't want it in the album because everyone was doing Chuck Berry songs. So we were looking for odd songs, and Mrs. Brown came about when Keith Hopwood, the guitar player in Herman's Hermits, bought a Gretsch Country Gentleman guitar, and it was the Chet Atkins model, which had this little damper thing on it supposedly to make it sound like a banjo, but it actually sounds like a banjo with flattened strings. So we were messing around with this guitar, and through the guitar, we created this song called Mrs. Brown, You Got a Lovely Daughter. And again, with made up words and stuff like that. We didn't know. It just made up as it went along. And Mickey Most recorded it against his will. He thought it was a load of old rubbish. He said, I'll hide it on side 2, track 3. No one will ever listen that far into the record, half jokingly. And of course, it came out in America, and some disc jockey in Philadelphia played it for 24 hours. It had 600,000 advance orders, and we were convinced that it should be a single, but we knew it would ruin Herman's Hermits' reputation. And it got put. It came in the charts at number 7 or something, which is the highest record had ever come in the charts at the time. Apart from the Beatles, who used to come in at number 1. And it was just a big smash hit, which led us back into the studio to do a follow-up to that, which was I'm Henry VIII I Am, which was also cut in one take, and where Herman says second verse same as the first, he really means play that again, the same bit again. And again, it was created in a moment. Barry Whitwam came up with that. The drummer came up with that brilliant drum feel. No one else can play it. And Leck did his Chuck Berry thing all over it. And I harmonized it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm glad you mentioned I'm Henry VIII I Am. That was another number 1 hit for you all. Is that one of your favorites every time that you come out and play? Does the audience? I mean, that's like the ultimate sing along.
Everybody it's kind of a punk song in a way, so it's different from everything else we do in the show. I mean, it is like, the Ramones did a moment from it as well, even, so it's that Herman's Hermits punk thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for going through all those songs. But big picture it for me in terms of, in terms of your place in the whole British invasion. Everyone remembers the Beatles, everyone remembers the Stones. But is it true that I guess, what was it, in like 1965? Did Billboard magazine name Herman's Hermits the best act of 65 ahead of the Beatles? Is that true?
They didn't say the best of. We sold more records than anybody else in Billboard and Cashbox. We were the biggest selling act in America for 2 years in a row, I think, 1965 and 1966. So it was not a competition. None of us were in a competition. We were all completely unique and different from each other. So the idea that we sold more than the Beatles, they just happened to have been making Abbey Road or something, you know what I mean? Or Revolt, it's ridiculous none of us competed with the Beatles. So, they were different from everybody else. Like the Stones weren't like the Beatles, and the Beatles weren't like the Who, and the Who weren't like the Stones and the Beatles, and Herman's Hermits weren't like anybody. We were totally unique. And, our position in it is who cares? if I can still sing these songs 60 years later or 70 years later, whatever comes next, it means that they were good songs. It doesn't matter who won what. And,
Yeah.
and you know, if we'd have done it for money, we would have quit after the first year. You know, we never did it. There's a great interview in a Honolulu press, where he goes, Herman from Herman's Hermits met Elvis Presley, his all-time hero. And there's a picture of me and Elvis. And they said, Peter Noone, who is Herman of Herman's Hermits, met Elvis on his day off from a 360-day world tour. And, you know, in retrospect, looking back at it, I didn't realize I was on a 360-day tour. I was just working. And that's what Herman's Hermits were. We were this hard-working band. And, you know, hopefully we became more and more entertaining as time went along. We were always entertaining at the Cavern. And that's how we kept going. You know, we had these key places that we would play where people liked us and kept asking us to come back. And that turned into a 360-day world tour. You know, we went to France, Belgium, Holland, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, Spain, Israel, the Philippines, Hong Kong, Australia, New Zealand, the United States of America, Canada, England, Australia, England, France, Belgium, Holland, Germany. We just went round and round and round, and that's what we did, and that's who we are.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Well, actually, that's who I am. When I use the we, it's the royal we. That's who I am. I like to sing, and I like to do what I do.
Yeah, we'll draw the distinction between the I and the we. Just to remind our listeners. So I guess you left Herman's Hermits in 1971 to do some solo stuff. And then today you're touring with Herman's Hermits starring Peter Noone. Isn't there another outfit with Barry Whitlam, Herman's Hermits starring Barry? Like there's a couple different.
Yeah, but
versions,
they
right?
only work in England in small places.
Right. You're the big touring act.
Well, yeah, you know, it's just one of those things that it's happened to. It's like, for example, in England, there's a band called the Animals, which is just the drummer, and there's a band called Herman's Hermits, which is just the drummer. And it's just because the English law did not protect trademarks like they do in America. And you know, it's inconsequential because they play and they're an opening act, you know. And if I was in the band, we'd be the headliner.
Sure.
Does that make sense, or does that sound pretentious?
No, that makes sense. I mean, you are the
Okay.
Herman. You are Herman. you're the voice. You're the headliner at the Birchmere. You're not opening for anybody.
Exactly. And I, by the way, just to say that the Birchmere is one of my favorite places to play because it's a small room. And you can see the audience. And I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to go out into the audience, but historically I have gone out into the audience just to say hello and look who the type of people and this whole family sitting at a table, which for her, you know, because we've had a thing I went to this school that made me have a 5-year plan. And I said, I don't want a 5-year plan. I want a 1-week plan. And then that turned into a 5-year plan over my lifetime. And recently, like in the last 5 or 6 years, I have a 10-year plan. And the plan is this: 10 more years. That's the only part of the plan. There's nothing else been set. Yeah, and I say to my drummer, you think you can make it for another 10 more years? Yeah. You think the Stones can make it for 10 more years? Nah. But we got 10 more years. So I go into the audience and I say 10 more years, and I look up. If there's young people there, they got more chance of keeping up with us.
I love it. Well, here's to 10 more years and counting.
Thank you. It's a great logo, isn't it? 10 more years. It's sort of living the dream stuff, isn't it?
You really are living. I mean, you mentioned you met Elvis. I mean, come on. I mean, you've been living the dream. So.
Yeah, I met all the people I wanted to meet, but I insisted, you see. I wanted to meet Jackie Wilson. I wanted to meet Marvin Gaye. I wanted to meet, the ones who were still alive I met.
Yeah, and you know what? Is it wild that there's probably other people that say the reverse? They say, wow, I've always wanted to meet Peter Noone.
Yeah, but he got more opportunity to meet me because I'm a pretty relaxed, easygoing kind of travel on planes and take the airport shuttle to get a rental car. I learned from Chuck Berry, who wanted to be on his own, to make all his decisions travel on his own. So I'm easy to me. I often sit next to the plane, and when I met Elvis Presley, part of the discussion was he'd never had the same experiences as me. Only because he was from Tupelo, Mississippi. He was from a different character. But he'd never got on a plane and sat next to a complete stranger. Think about it.
Wow.
Everybody else in the world has done that at some time. He went from being a country boy driving a truck to get in his own plane and stuff like that. He never got on a plane and sat next to a complete stranger like I do all the time. And people say, are you that guy? And the other day I was coming back on a plane from somewhere, and the guy sitting next to me opened Wikipedia on his phone and said, "Are you this guy?" That never happened to Elvis Presley, but it probably happened to Johnny Cash, because Johnny Cash was also one of those people who was very free with. He was accessible, I think it's called. So I have a very low expectations of how people react to me.
Wow, that's a good point. You're right. Elvis sort of leapfrogged that whole period there. He went from nobody to everything.
I stayed in that thing. I had a bit of that where I was in my hotel room, and people were suggesting that I didn't go out because there'd be too many girls outside, and I say, well, how many do you think I can manage?
Nice comeback for sure. But I love that idea of the guy. You said there's someone, younger on Wikipedia, and is this you? Does that happen a lot if let's say you're sitting next, especially younger people, and they turn to you, and if you say Hermits, do they say, I'm trying to place that, and then you start saying, woke up this morning feeling fine, and they're like, oh yeah, I know that song.
Yeah, that's all it is, really, isn't it? I mean, the people who it may be Tourette syndrome, but when I was standing next to Elvis Presley, I said, well, since my baby left me, and whenever I meet somebody who's famous, I do a bit of their song. I just can't stop myself.
Yeah,
isn't that weird?
No.
I didn't sing Sherry for Frankie Valli, but when I met him, his music was in my head, and I think my music has a face on it. When people hear the music, they see my face, and if they hear the music and they want to find out who it is, they will go and there will be now a face on it. Remember, the radio didn't have that. Internet has got a face with everything. So I don't really care if people know me. I just want the people who like the music to keep showing up, and as long as I can present it properly without changing all the keys and all that stuff that people do, and having a track, as long as I can be live and fail a couple of times during the show. I think that's important for the audience to realize that there ain't nothing more real than Herman's Hermits live. I sometimes stop songs in the middle and say, I can't remember the rest of this song. Let's do something else. I like to keep it so that I can fail, because that's the joy of being in show business, really. Go and try new stuff. And I remember once at the Birchmere, I did Museum, which is a Donovan song that Herman's Hermits recorded, and none of the other guys on stage knew it. So I just played it on the guitar on my own, and it wasn't great, but it was a very good feeling for me to be able to just deliver a song. And now, I got songs like Listen People that I don't want anybody else to play in. Mrs. Brown, I own it, just a guitar. Mrs. Brown, You Got a Lovely Daughter, it's just a guitar. Nothing, nobody else playing anything. Please, don't play anything. And, so you can sell the story of the song. So it's constantly changing. Not having a set list has kept the Hermits, the modern day Hermits, consternation and enthusiasm have the same face. They think they know what song I'm going to do next, and it's never that one, because I don't know what song I'm going to do next. There's something about singing the songs and having the audience recognize them that is joyful, and what's wrong with that?
It's perfect. And I can't think of a better person to come perform, because for 18, 19 months, we've all been living like hermits in a pandemic, and now we get to come out of our hermit lifestyle and
Exactly.
see
There you
Herman's
go.
Hermit.
There's a kind of hush all over the world. It's behind us now.
Exactly. Well, again, everyone, check out Herman's Hermit starring Peter Noone live in concert this Thursday night at the Birchmere on Alexandria, Virginia. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. This was a blast talking with you.
Hey, likewise. It's good talking to you. Take care of yourself, son.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.